Good morning, and thank you for joining us for the annual Fellows Forum. I'm Mike Graham, Executive Director of ACD. One of the many ways the ACD Foundation supports the mission of the college is by providing funding for continuing education programs, including this Fellows Forum. Our continuing education verification partner is the Academy of General Dentistry. In addition to our partnership through the PACE program, ACD provides ethics articles for AGD's publication, AGD Impact, written by members of the American Society of Dental Ethics section. The Fellows Forum is our traditional time to gather and discuss big issues facing the profession and to consider the role of the college in the context of that issue. Our topic today is the development of standards for leadership in oral health care, and we bring this to you as part of our renewed focus on building leadership capacity across our organization and within the profession. Dr. Robert Fiala, our president, created a task force on standards for leadership in oral health care, and that group has drafted a set of standards for review by the fellowship and eventually the profession. The goal is to publish the standards by the summer of 2026. Today's facilitators are Drs. Robert Fiala, Sri Koka, Terry Dolan, and Naren Wilson. Serving on the task force, but unable to join the forum today, is Dr. Carl Hayden. A little bit about Dr. Fiala. He's the past president of the American Dental Association. He currently serves as director and past president of the American Board of Periodontology, chair of the Harvard School of Dental Medicine Board of Fellows, and an appointed member of the MIT Sloan School of Management Alumni Board. He's a leader in dental informatics and serves as the chair of the ADA Standards Consensus Body on Artificial and Augmented Intelligence. He's also the U.S. lead designated expert on artificial intelligence for dentistry. Dr. Fiala, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Graham. And it's wonderful to have this session today because this is going to be an exciting thing for all of us as we move forward into a more technological realm. There are many definitions for leadership, but objective measures by which professionals eventually evaluate themselves are currently not available in healthcare. Today, we present to you a draft set of voluntary aspirational standards with the potential to strengthen and elevate the profession. This is critically important for this time. They're aspirational, but how many people have been on a board where people come in with different mindsets about how fiduciary responsibility is, how they comport themselves on a board, perhaps other aspects of this. They come in with a different set of understanding leadership. And it takes some time for that board to gel and create a culture. Following today's session, we'll be incorporating your feedback into the draft and open comment period for our fellows, as well as the organizations to submit feedback. In this spring, the section leaders will have an opportunity to review and discuss the opportunities for moving the standards forward with a publication for the standards in the Journal of the American College of Dentists in the spring of 2022. Let me give some background, pardon me, for the people that are on the task force. The 5-member task force has worked this past year to develop this program, and hopefully you'll give us feedback as to where we'll go with it in terms of developing this further. Dr. Carl Hayden, who could not be here today, as you know, is the founder and president of Atlanta-based Academy of Advanced Leadership, an internationally recognized consulting and professional development firm. Dr. Teresa Dolan is the chief dental officer for Overjet, the global leader in dental AI. She's also a professor and dean emeritus of the University of Florida College of Dentistry, where she served as dean and chief academic officer from 2023 to 2013. She is also the 2025 president of the American College of Dentists Foundation. Dr. Srinivas Koka has served as professor and department chair at the Mayo Clinic and as dean and professor at the University of Mississippi Medical Center. He is a founder of the Career Design in Dentistry, a nonprofit organization that provides leadership training for the profession, and of the Executive Leadership Enterprises, which offers educational and professional development in leadership across the professions. Sir Naren Wilson is a fellow of the American College of Dentists and president emeritus of the College of General Dentistry and emeritus professor of dentistry, King's College in London. He is an honorary founding president of the College of General Dentistry. He is the author of numerous and editor of numerous contributions to the dental literature. So with that, we'll start our program. Now, I love this particular quote because it says everything about what we're trying to achieve when we're leaders. The first thing is you want to have some kind of a presence as you lead in whatever your role you have. But also, in your absence, it should last. And as you know, Sheryl Sandberg was the COO for Facebook and Meta for about 13 years. And that quote really resonates for all of us. Now, at this time, we have a number of different leanings in for leadership. Over the past year, from 2024 to 2025, so many organizations are now looking for leadership development. And these front page articles about leadership and the mindset that has to surround leadership is advancing even further. Everybody's looking for leadership development. Particularly, our fellows are looking for it as well. And so we're trying to provide something not only for leadership development that we're developing within the college, but also we thought, as Sir Naren brought forward this idea of developing standards for leadership globally, we thought this fits very well with what we're trying to do as well. And so if we can work through this and try to find a way for us to offer this on a global stage, that would be great. Technology is profoundly altered because right now, every organization now is basically digital. Your connections with your organizations are digitally enhanced. In fact, I had a conversation with the president of the American Dental Association recently that said majority of the fellows, the members of the American Dental Association engage with the ADA digitally. Not virtually only, but digitally. Now that's a limitation because obviously our tradition is really to do things in face-to-face. These transformations require a new mindset. There's a new breed of leadership that when we start to bring these digital transformations forward, this is something that we really need to engage in a way because sometimes being at the table and interacting with colleagues doesn't necessarily transmit or translate as well when you're standing there in front of your own computer in your office or wherever you are. Trying to create that ethical connection or culture connection is difficult, and you need to really engage that in a different way. So the essence of professional leadership is inherently human. We know that. That's how we've all engaged as we started our professional careers. But now the influence is not only through data and devices, but also trust, presence, and shared collaboration and experiences. We can't lose that tradition. It's a critically important part of what we do. And so we want to make sure that we can create a new set of leadership standards that can close the gap with what people come into their board experience and at what different levels. There's different levels of leadership, maybe from right in your own office all the way up through a global leadership organization. I'm sorry. So who are you as a leader? Is it who you think you are, or is it who other people think you are? Now, obviously, you have an impression of what you do and how you are as a leader, but maybe other people don't have that same impression. How do we close that gap for all of us? Are we really good listeners? Listening has been quoted as being the most important characterization of a good leader. Are we good leaders? Listening is an intentional activity. We have to really focus on doing that. Many of us, myself included sometimes, will be in a conversation, and as soon as we hear one viewpoint, we're already going ahead and thinking, are we in line with this? Are we opposing this? Do we modify this? And we're starting to respond in our minds how we will respond to the person. 117 academic papers in the workplace found that the skill is far easier to describe than to actually employ, because listening takes a lot of intention, and that's very important. Now, why is that? The 5 most common causes for not listening well: not leaving time for questions, responding too quickly, a little bit of haste, not validating a person's concerns, offering critical feedback, being a little defensive. You're thinking that right away, because right away somebody's presenting you with a problem, and you're thinking, well, wait a minute now, this is not my problem, and you get a little defensive sometimes. Invisibility, not showing or looking like you're listening to the person. You might be moving papers around your desk. I'm listening to you, and meanwhile you're moving papers or you're shuffling things, and they don't feel that you're looking at them and engaging with what they're saying. Exhaustion, if you don't get a lot of sleep, some of us don't. Sometimes you're a little tired, and you lose capacity to focus and retain what they're trying to tell you and translate to you in that conversation. And then also inaction. You listen, you're looking at them, you're listening to them, I got you, and then later on, you don't follow up. They come to you with a problem, I'll take care of that. They never hear from you again. So that's a big problem. Adaptive leadership through Harvard School of Business, actually, they started this, the most popular, I'd say, course at the business school is adaptive leadership, developing an adaptive leadership mindset. And the reason for that is it's not about knowing all the answers. The problems aren't always easy. Sometimes somebody will come with you, let's say you're leading a team, and they're coming to you with problems. And you can turn around and say, well, all we can do is we can hire a consultant, we can fix that. That's easy. People can fix things like that. Hire a consultant. Sometimes these are very complex, nuanced problems. And you have people in different parts of the organization that don't agree, very complex considerations. Some areas of the organization may feel this might impact their job. Some people might think this is the greatest thing in the world. Some people think you have to fire the leadership. So all of this comes into play. And how do you help them come to a conclusion? So it's about guiding diverse teams and finding solutions for complex problems. You have to step back, create a framework for them, and let them help them solve the problems themselves and bring that forward to the leadership. You're the mediator in that sense. So digital engagement and human connections, organizations embrace new technologies. We're all doing it now. They must preserve human bonds and define collegial life. That's how we work. And the demands are self-awareness. Sometimes people aren't as self-aware. There are times when we can be, and there are times when we're not necessarily focused in on that. And so knowing when technology enhances our connection and when it distances us is different. You know, there are times when it does and times when it doesn't. We must be adept at conducting virtual meetings as well as engaging in face-to-face, as we always have done. The profession of dentistry right now is at the intersection of innovation and humanity. We're interacting digitally all the time, but unfortunately it's not as warm and as fuzzy as we are when we're sitting there looking at somebody, looking at the nuance when you present something. You can read people when you're in front of them. You know when they're reacting a little bit differently. You can see them you can see their eyes, you can see their response. You don't see that, it doesn't translate so much when you have somebody on with their picture, their portrait. You're not seeing their response. They're not looking at the reaction, or no picture at all, or a side picture, like they're looking somewhere else in the room and they've got a camera looking at the side of their head. So those are things that do not make communication translate very well. So as we shape the next generation of leaders, our challenge is not to choose between tradition and transformation, but to integrate them together. Critically important. It takes work for us to do that as leaders. The future belongs to the people that can think digitally and act humanely, lead with wisdom and compassion, and inspire trust across both physical and virtual communities. And that's where we're at right now. So we're trying to develop those types of leaders, and it takes some effort. So with that, we're trying to find out if we can close those gaps by having some standards where people can say, maybe at your own office, a teamwork, or whether it's at a local district committee, or whether it's a state committee, regional or national committee, or even international committee. There are different ways you have to look at this because your responsibilities rise. And they're not, sometimes at some of those levels, you don't actually, it's not an entry-level position. So you want to come in with some consonant ways of dealing with each other. With that, I'm going to turn that over to the person who brought this idea to us, Sir Naryn Wilson.
Forward and back, is it? Yeah. Well, good morning. What a privilege to be here. And thank you to the college for picking up this idea. It was in my mind for a while, just a piece of unfinished business for me. And the college has picked up and run with this. And how timely, because there is a void, not just here in North America or in the US, but around the world for standards in leadership in oral health care. So, let's get on to what are standards? Well, we're surrounded by standards, many things that keep us safe. Technical standards, aviation standards, health and safety standards, which give us, hopefully, trust and confidence in all sorts of parts of our working lives. But we too, we need the trust and confidence of the people we serve, and therefore we need to have standards too, that people can see and hopefully see us and respect us for what we set out to aim to do. Yes, there are lots of definitions, but this is the one the task force has settled on. Expectations of how individuals within a profession, how individually and collectively behave, perform, and fulfill their responsibilities. And it's been said to you a couple of times today already, it's not just individually, it's individually and collectively that we uphold the standing and status of our great profession. That's why you're here, ladies and gentlemen, the new fellows. It's not just what you do alone, it's what we do together collectively that helps make the difference. So, interesting, we should look a little bit at the history of standards. Did standards create the professions, or did professions create the standards? Well, if I turn to your seal of the college, for those that have not delved into it, these are Egyptian priests, physicians. They were probably told by the head priest what they were expected to do in the way of looking after the pharaohs and various wives and wherever they did care for. And they were probably dictated to say, you're expected to do this, that, and the other. But fast forward to the 19th century, here in North America, your colleagues who founded then the American Society of Dental Surgery, the precursor to the ADA, and the people who created this college in 1920, they said, what we've got to do is we are going to set ourselves challenges and standards that we are going to operate by, that are going to give the patients we look after and other healthcare professions confidence in us. And we now have control of those standards. Wouldn't it be sad if we just sat back and waited for society and said, hey, dentistry, you guys have got to do better. We're expecting more of you. Wouldn't that be really sad? We've got to do it ourselves. We've got to be in control, take leadership in terms of it, and it should be challenging. We should challenge ourselves. Society moves on. And that's partly of where we are today. How do we develop standards? And Bob alluded to this. Well, first there's a proposal. And in my case, I said, hey, there's a big gap here. There's a big void we need to fill. And the college is the perfect body to do this. I would suggest not just nationally, but to lead internationally in it. And Bob sets up a task force. There's a debate, backwards and forwards. Things are drafted, various versions, as you would imagine and expect. And then what we're doing today, starting off, first and foremost with you, fellows and new fellows of the college, of consulting with you. Have we got this right? Does this reflect your understanding of what the standards should be in leadership? Leadership at all levels. Everybody has to be a leader at the chair side. You've got to lead the patient, you've got to lead your team. You may not go on to lead nationally, regionally, or internationally, but you'll vote for people that will do these jobs. So you've got to know what they're going to do for me, what they're going to do for this organization. Where do I put my vote in a ballot paper? So it is important that you not only look at the proposals for each individual in the practice, but at all levels, it's important to the profession. Then we'll review all the comments. Hopefully, you're going to fill these bits of paper you got in front of you today with comments and suggestions, things that we may have forgotten, omitted, or you feel ought to be included in it. And we'll take that away. And as Bob said, we've got this challenge to get this published by next spring. So we need that feedback, and that's really important because it's got to be owned, not just by us, but by the whole college, and it's got to be owned by you people as well, as we'll say in a minute or two. And then we come to publication. And with it comes responsibilities. Responsibilities for the college to take these things on, to keep them up to date. Society moves on. You, as Bob alluded to, one of the big challenges at the present time is artificial intelligence, digital dentistry, etc. How are we adjusting and how are we adapting to come with that, and what's coming next? And like diseases and things, HIV, COVID, the technology will keep coming, and there will be new things around the corner. Is it robotics leading on from AI? Will we need standards on something like that? It has to be kept up to date. So that's the responsibility of the college, but it also is a responsibility of you, the people who make the college. You have to adopt them, apply them, reflect on them, and when the opportunity comes, feedback so they stay up to date, current, and things that will allow our patients to trust and have confidence in us. And that trust and confidence is the thing that makes us great. So that's the responsibility, ladies and gentlemen. Not just the college, for everybody within it, all the fellows. So that's what we've got to do. Bob.
Okay, well, thank you for those, both of those introductions, both to the project and to the concept. So my role is to give you an opportunity to provide us feedback. And just as a brief recap, thank you, dear Sir Narn Wilson, for bringing this idea to us. He attended our last year's annual session and said, I have this idea. I think it's really important. I would agree that today, it's more important than ever that we invest in ourselves and our leadership development in the best interest of the profession. So I'd like to just take a quick break before we actually introduce the proposed core concepts and all of the related competencies to say feedback. Do you agree? Is this something worthy of the college to invest in as we grow and develop our leadership programs? And so we'll take about 5 minutes, if that's okay, and I believe we'll have microphones in the audience. And we welcome your feedback. The first comment is always the hardest. And I'm sure many of you have thought about leadership initiatives. I'm sure many of you have participated in leadership initiatives throughout your career. Maybe you're doing it at your local or state level. What is your thoughts about how the American College can contribute to this important initiative? Yes, in the back. And do we have some handheld mics that we can use for this?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for taking on this mantle. My name is Bill Lehman. I'm from Clearwater, Florida. Bringing a new member this year, so it's the first time I've done it. Really excited. I'd like to ask a question about how in the digital, it's kind of hard for me to call it digital dentistry. AI, I think, is going to be different than digital dentistry. But at the same time, how will the college look at the ethics and the responsibility of a practitioner's delegation to a digital assistant? I think I'm an orthodontist by trade, and I'm seeing that a lot in my profession where there are AI being used very effectively in patient care and also being used very effectively and have the doctor not touch the patient as much anymore. So I'm curious about that part of your mission. Thank you.
Yeah, so we have actually some people who are very involved in digital dentistry and AI technology, and so I think, Dr. Wilson, you wanted to comment first?
If I could maybe comment first, people either side me are more expert than me in this, but artificial intelligence to me and everything that stems from it and the digital dentistry, etc., fabulous tool, wonderful technology, but it must stay a tool and it mustn't become the master. And that is part of what we do through evolving leadership as this does evolve, and will do probably more and more of the things in everyday clinical practice, things that historically we had to do personally or we delegated to do. So I think part of moving forward and part of a leadership that is fit for future purpose is that we stay as the leaders, not become subservient to these things as a new master. And I always, when I lectured about evidence-based medicine, I said exactly the same thing. It's a tool, it's guidance. The three things are the evidence, your professional opinion, and the values of the patient. If I said, evidence says, we've got to cut your left leg off, but I've been in this business for 50 years, and I've got a hunch I could save your leg. What do you want? You want me to save your leg or go with the evidence and take it off? And I think the same sort of philosophy is true with artificial intelligence. ChatGPT, is it garbage in, garbage out? And that can be the case, and there's 2 or 3 things I've already challenged it. Find something that there's only 2 or 3 papers on. It will produce something that reads well, and you think, no, well, they're very tangible. But it's based on very little information. And we've got to stay on top of that and understand the limitations that are there. And I see this part of this leadership package of, on behalf of our dental team, on behalf of our patients, that we stay as the leaders and we know how to use those tools. That's my view on it.
Well, you know, right now, the use of artificial intelligence in dentistry right now is aligned with anatomy, identification of anatomy and disease, as well as clinical decision support, helping you, confirm your findings, allowing you to see certain things that you can say, I can identify this. And the one thing about this is, yeah, sure, insurance companies are using it to adjudicate certain claims. Maybe if they see that there is a 33% or more carious lesion on a radiograph, obviously sometimes that's just drop to pay. They'll say, okay, I can see the reason for this. That's your one question. And then that goes through. But they never allow for a disallowance of or a denial by artificial intelligence. They should never do that, because your clinical acumen, our clinical acumen, is what makes everything. We have to confirm that. That's why we're the doctors. And so we can use the tool, but we have the final say. And you can confirm it, and then you can perhaps say to someone, I think we can treat this. Even though it might say that it may be too far to be treated, we know how many people have already treated things that might not necessarily be the case. So that's where it is right now. Just apply your acumen. And to Trinaran's point about garbage in, garbage out, absolutely. That's why prompt engineering is the new engineering among all of us. The more granular and the more specific you can make your prompt, the more information you get. And you can deny some things in that they write because sometimes you don't think it's phrased the correct way. You can change it. You have all the control. So the thing is that it's not go right to ChatGPT, say, write me a letter, write me an article about this, or write me some kind of a statement. What you do is the rule is think first, AI second. You think first, put your thinking in first, and let the response come back, and then adjust, and then look at it and see if you can take it, or you want to modify it or throw it out. That's the way it should be.
So thank you, Bob. I'd say we did not anticipate that question, but I would say we're very much aligned, and I'll reflect on your work, Bob, in the ADA Standards Committee, where we talk about artificial intelligence as an augmenting technology, meaning that it's always your responsibility as a health professional to use your critical thinking skills, use your leadership skills, and always work in the best interest of your patient, but take advantage of the augmentation that can help you do your job better, more accurately, faster, whatever your goals are for using that technology. So great question. I'm glad it got everybody thinking and engaged. So we'll take a pause on questions for now, and the next section we'll talk about the different leadership standards from the core leadership standards as we've described them, leadership standards for teams, for local and regional groups, for national and then international groups. And we'll briefly describe them. We're not going to read every standard to you, but then there'll be an exercise that as we've been describing where you'll get to discuss among yourselves for one of those categories, things like, do these standards really represent the most challenging opportunities for us in dentistry that we should reflect on as the ACD? And what's our role, for example, in developing training materials that can help fellows in the development of their leadership skills? Are these standards, how will they help us in our clinical practice, in managing our teams, and are there accountability metrics? So as we present briefly these different sets of standards as subsets of the core standards, think about those questions, and then we really need and would love your feedback as we build out our content on leadership development. That information, your feedback, will help us develop more appropriate programs that will help our fellows in their professional development. So that's the concept. And now I'll have the opportunity to talk a little bit briefly about the proposed core standards for leadership. And so when we say core standards, what do we really mean? It's the professional behavior expected of every dentist. And I'll use an AI example. So of course now, every time I have an assignment, I go to one of the AI tools and I'll say, hey, I have this assignment, I'm gonna be talking about leadership standards. I need an image that reflects core standards in leadership that have something to do with the American College of Dentists. And when I put that in, this image came up as one of the top 3 images. And some of you might know Carol and Phil Haynes. And I thought, oh, isn't that great? Because we know them very well. Carol was a regent for Regency 3, still serves the college. And their image came up. And I would say, aren't they a great example of people who really live the standards of leadership as well as the core principles of the American College of Dentists? And so when I say that, what are we talking about? What we wrote in the draft document for these core standards is putting the interest of those you serve before yourself, right? I mean, putting others first. A core professional principle, setting aside personal bias and prejudice, demonstrating empathy, respect, integrity, openness, and accountability, and doing that in a way that engenders trust and confidence. So I think those are hard to argue with, and I hope we can agree that those are some good fundamental principles, and I would suggest that everyone in this room is a leader yourself, but you have your leadership behaviors and abilities have probably been shaped by somebody like Carol and Phil, who have influenced you, have provided good leadership, good role modeling as you've worked to develop your own leadership skills. So what else is in this core standard for leadership? Some of them are more skills-based. Like, we're expected to be problem solvers, and not just solving any old way, but solving them in a clinically evidence-based supported way. And Narn, you mentioned that, and I think that's so true. So how do we develop that skill set so that we're effective in problem solving? Here's a tough one. How do we admit when we're wrong, when we make mistakes? I think that's a core leadership skill. No one's perfect. I've made my share of mistakes. Admitting to and apologizing for errors, misjudgments, or omissions. Asking for help. Sometimes the leader is challenged to ask for help. I've gotten over that myself because I know I need a lot of help, and I know that the more I can incorporate other perspectives and benefit from your skill set, your knowledge base, I know that can help me be a more effective leader. And then engage in targeted continuing professional development. Well, you're all committed to that because you're all sitting here this morning learning and contributing. And the final core standard that is written in this draft document, and again, we want your feedback, is regular reflection and effectively managing your performance, well-being, and resilience. And I highlighted that one in particular because we live in challenging times. We've had lots of issues, starting with COVID, and now we have lots of political issues going on, or maybe we have personal challenges. And I think as leaders, we probably don't often spend enough time ensuring that we do invest in our own reflection. How are we managing our lives? How are we managing our performance? How are we ensuring that we're well so that we can be strong enough to provide good leadership and help others? So this is my happy place. I live in Sarasota. We have a condo that overlooks Sarasota Bay. And when I need to reflect and exhale and relax and re-nourish myself, I can just sit in our condo and look out at the sunset, and it makes me a very happy person. So I hope each of you find your happy place and have your strategies in place to ensure that you can be strong and resilient and therefore become a better leader and assist others. So, you might ask, how do these core standards, we often talk about our ethics handbook for dentistry, and how do these standards relate to that document, which is very important. It was very thoughtfully created. I hope you're very familiar with it. And I would say they're complementary. I don't think they're different. I think they're complementary. And I'll just highlight, and you've heard these words so many times already just this morning, ethics, professionalism, leadership, and excellence. There is a subsection on leadership. And I do believe, and Pam, you can argue if in fact it is complementary, and everyone on the committee who helped update the ethics handbook. But I think, here they talk about 4 primary roles in leadership: modeling professional behavior, leading the dental team, guiding patients to improve their oral health, and leading the wider community and health system to improve population health. I think those are very much aligned with the principles that we'll be talking about today. So that's a quick overview of the core, and I'm going to invite Dr. Srikoka to talk about team leadership. And you don't need this, you just need that.
I need
okay,
that.
thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. It's a privilege and an honor to be part of this task force, so thank you all for including me in the collaboration. Whenever I present, I am nervous. And what I do to help myself with the nerves is I take myself back to my favorite topic, to my favorite group, in my favorite place, and that calms me down. And that is room 15 of the dental school in Lincoln, Nebraska, talking about centric relation. And today, and today in the audience, we have someone who endured that lecture with me as a student. Sarah Meng is here from Wichita, Kansas, and she'll be inducted this afternoon. Sarah, we've come a long way since room 15 in the dental school. Okay, the words team and leadership, they just roll off our tongues, right? But they're heavily nuanced words, both of them. If you actually stop and think about, well, what do I mean by team? And what do I mean by leadership? it's a little more complicated. Most of us who've practiced, or even if we're in academics or another environment, every day we are managing, as the leader, a massive number of relationships. And if we can get those relationships right, our life is more stressful, our patients get better care, and our business is more successful, right? And if we get them wrong, this is the stuff that keeps us up at night when we're lying in our bed with the lights off and it's dark and the only person we're really talking to is ourselves. This is the stuff that keeps us up. And this is the stuff that if we break, we use the shower to shed a few tears because no one sees us cry, right? If we can get this right, we're successful. So how do we know that we're getting it right? That's why standards are so important, because they tell us if we're doing things the way they should be done and what we should be aspiring to. Leadership matters because it is the only capability that can systematically bring out the best in people, that they could accomplish more together than they can alone. There is nothing else that does this. And for us, in our lives and in our practices, there's only so much we can do alone. So what we can do together then becomes the biggest challenge. But again, if we pull it off, our lives have more impact and we make a difference in a much more significant way. I think leadership is about feelings. Lots of times people use the words leadership and management interchangeably. I think they're very different things. Management is about processes, it's about systems. Leadership is about feelings. If you went to work every day at a place that had these feelings for yourself and your team, trust, loyalty, forgiveness, compassion, you would love to go to work. On the other hand, fear, hatred, these are the kinds of things that you don't want to go to work at all. And you won't be engaged, you won't work hard, patients won't get good care, you'll leave. All these things affect our businesses, right, and our practices. So I love this quote. It was given to me 3 years ago, and it really changed the way I look at my job as a leader. When a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, you don't fix the flower. Too often we personify our problems. This happened because so-and-so wasn't doing their job well. In reality, there's a lot more to it than that. It could be the system or the environment. And who's responsible for that environment? When we run a practice, it's actually us. Denny Cortese, I was privileged to be chair of dentistry at Mayo Clinic for a few years. And in a new chair's leadership workshop, Denny stood up and he said this. He said, "You do not want to hear this. But in my experience, the best leaders feel responsible for everything and everybody." And again, that's the pressure that comes with, we can do the dentistry, but it's how do we get our people to work together? So giving ourselves guideposts, giving ourselves standards to aim for, to know when we're doing well and when we're not doing well. If you think about it, we wouldn't practice dentistry without standards, but we practice leadership without standards every day, and this makes no sense. So let me give you a couple of human stories to go beyond the abstracts. On the left here is Steve Malgazzo, former Director of Strategic Operations for the US Navy SEALs. When I lived in San Diego, I got to know Steve. And he used to be a teacher during his time in the SEALs for BUDS, which is the course through which people have to go to become a SEAL. It's a 6-month course, twice a year in Coronado Island. About 175 to 200 men start the program. 15 to 30 will come out the other side. Before you go to BUDS, you have to sit and go through a 7-week training course to get you ready for BUDS. So they already know how fast you can run, how high you can jump, how far you can swim. So I asked Steve once, I go, have you looked at the data to predict who will become a SEAL based upon how they did in their 7-week program? And Steve said, yes, we have looked at the data, and it doesn't predict who's going to become a SEAL. But we know within a few days who's going to make it. I'm like, okay, how do you know? He said, SEAL training is tough. It's supposed to be very, very difficult. But it's really trying to test 2 qualities beyond your physical and mental prowess. SEAL training is intentionally set up so that you cannot get through on your own. So the first quality we're looking for is, are you humble enough to ask for help? Because if you don't ask for help, you will not make it. The second quality we're looking for is, do you give help? And in fact, is that more important than the first quality? If your group realizes that you only ask for help, but you don't give help, you won't get the help you need to become a SEAL. Hartzell Schaff. In every big hospital, there's a legendary surgeon. In my time at Mayo Clinic, it was Hartzell, cardiothoracic surgeon. And I used to play a lot of golf back then, and Hartzell was part of my golf group. So it's a Monday morning, I have a patient in my chair, Mrs. Helen Beers, and she asks me what I did that weekend, and I said, well, I played golf, and she said, who'd you play with? And I said, Hartzell Schaff. And she got tears in her eyes, and she said, if it wasn't for Hartzell Schaff, my husband and I would not have had the last 15 years we had together. Turned out, many years before, her husband had had a massive heart attack in Chicago, almost died, barely lived. Weeks later, he was strong enough to go back to Rochester, Minnesota, where they lived. They get back to Rochester, and he needs a very risky procedure to live. And the senior cardiothoracic surgeons declined to do the surgery. And this is odd, because at Mayo, we are a place of first hope and last resort. We are used to doing the stuff that may not work, and we are used to doing the stuff that other people are not willing to do. So why did these two surgeons, these senior surgeons, decline to do the surgery? Well, it wasn't that they weren't willing to kill a patient, because that's the risk that we're willing to take. It wasn't that they weren't willing to do a risky procedure on a king or a queen or a president or a prime minister. They've done that before. It was because Mrs. Beers' husband was Dr. Oliver Beers, the legendary surgeon at Mayo Clinic before Hartzell. And they were not willing to be the surgeon that killed Oliver Beers. He was President Reagan's surgeon. So a young member of the faculty steps forward and says, I'll put my career on the line, I'll do it. And that was Hartzell Schaff. And that's the stuff on which legends are made. So we're all out for dinner one night, the golfing buddies with our spouses, and I'm sitting across from Hartzell's wife, and I go, Vonnie, when did you know that Hartzell was special? And she says, I've known Hartzell since he was a resident. See that little picture there? And if there's one thing that I can assure you about Hartzell Schaff, is he's not special, he's just Hartzell. So the next time I'm playing golf, I get him one-on-one, and I go, Hartzell, what gives here? At Mayo Clinic, you are a legend. And Vonnie says, you're just normal. And he says this, and I'll paraphrase it. He said, Sri, I'm a pretty good surgeon. Yes, am I technically good? Yes. But there's lots of people on this planet as good or better than me. But where I am different, I think, is that I am ruthless with who's on my team. I'm looking for three qualities in the people on my team. Number one, are you trying to be the best in the world at what you do? Number two, more importantly than number one, are you trying to help the people on the team around you be the best in the world at what they do? And number three, more importantly than number one and number two, does the patient always come first? So here are two pinnacles of leadership, right? Team leadership, and it's the same principles. So excellence, professionalism, leadership, they all wrap up together. And all that we accomplish is in a team environment. So I think if you're going to be a great leader and you're going to aspire to reach the standards of excellence as a leader, you have to get into the cauldron. You have to get into that ditch of emotions and feelings, because that's where we will do our best work or we will do our worst work. Okay, Terry, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sri, so much. The next section of the standards document deals with local and regional leadership. And for those of you who follow at least US politics, you might remember Tip O'Neill, who's famous for saying probably a lot of different things, but all politics is local. And I would suggest that all leadership is also local. And what do I mean by that? I mean, how have we been influenced, and how do we develop our initial leadership, our set of leadership skills and our beliefs and our values? It's how we were influenced growing up in our household, who we met in college, who encouraged us to be a dentist. Maybe there was a professional in your community that encouraged you, inspired you to also pursue your higher education. And then you became involved locally, and you had people there who encouraged you, hopefully, and you took on progressive responsibilities. So I think what happens locally and regionally is so important. There's a list of core standards under that category, and I'm highlighting three here because I think they're especially important. One is when you're asked to do something or take on a leadership role or a new responsibility, know what you're getting into. It's always amazing to me when people volunteer for things, but they have no idea what the responsibilities or expectations are. And I would say, as a core competency, ask those questions. When people ask you to help, and be honored that they invited you to participate, also ask them, what are the expectations? How do I know I'm going to perform well in that role? How am I going to fulfill that responsibility? And that all helps in our building of trust. And I think you'll see the word trust sprinkled throughout our presentations. And as we hone our leadership skills, I think it's all because we want to be transparent in the way we react or interact with people, and we want to be trusted, and we want to be trusted individuals. And one way to become trusted is to deliver on what you've been asked to support or to volunteer for. The next one is communicate, communicate, communicate. And I would say I learned this lesson as a dean and had the opportunity to do that for quite a few years. And the one message I've learned very loud and clear from that experience is you can never over-communicate. You know, I used to believe, well, I said it once, or I put it in a newsletter, and of course everyone read it and understood, and they're on board, and we're going to charge forward. And what I realize is that's nowhere near the truth. And part of being a good leader, and probably at any level, but especially locally, is to communicate your feelings, your expectations. It's part of that. It's tied into the first session, know what you're getting into, is to be an effective communicator, over-communicate if necessary, so that you can stay aligned and marching in the same direction. And then the third that I'd like to highlight, these are my interpretations, you see the actual wording also on the slide, is partner, partner, partner. Because another thing I learned, especially as a dean, is that you can't do everything yourself. You really have to delegate, you have to find good partners. And in order to engage those partners effectively, you need to communicate with them and they need to trust you, and you need to be aligned on mission, objective, what you're hoping to accomplish. And so I think these are all skills that are highly critical, probably at all levels, but we included them in the local and regional leadership standards. In addition to that, and you see I put a little toolbox there, is because I think all of these are tools that we keep in our toolbox. And part of becoming a good leader or using your leadership skills effectively is to put lots of tools in that toolbox, and then knowing when to pull one out in a particular issue or challenge or situation so that you can become the most effective leader possible. And so there's lots of things that we can work on as leaders to build that toolbox and deploy them as needed. But of course, always promoting high standards of professional behavior, or even be willing to comment to an individual who you think is maybe not living up to those high standards. Providing inspirational leadership. That seems to be, we often think that that's the leader's only job, is to be inspirational. But I think inspiration comes from having a strategic vision, being able to communicate it, engendering trust, and sharing that information effectively with your colleagues. Number 6, be consultative, accountable, and encourage feedback. That gets back to earlier comments. We don't know it all. We don't own every piece of information. We don't understand every perspective in the room. And the more we're able to communicate and collaborate and be open to that feedback and yet hold ourselves accountable, I think the more effective we'll be as local leaders or regional leaders. And then, of course, always being open to learning and taking responsibility for your decisions. To me, though, this is the final one on the list for this section of the standards, and to me, it's probably the most important. It may be the most impactful, or the thing I feel best about, if I can do this successfully, is to pay it forward. I think as we reflect in the room about all the individuals who have supported us, helped us in our career development and our leadership development, one, always say thank you to those people. but also in honor of that gift, pay it forward. And I think that's what's so important. As I now become, there was a time when I was the youngest person in the room and the beneficiary of lots of great advice and lots of feedback and lots of support. Now I've moved into that other dimension of maybe on the more senior end of that continuum. And I feel that it's even more important for me to uphold that responsibility and to pay it forward. And I have lots of unsolicited requests for advice, and to the best of my ability and within the time constraints that we all live with, I always try to have those conversations with more junior colleagues, because I think that's one of the best ways we can be grateful for the gifts we've been given and the opportunity to pay it forward for our more junior colleagues. So that's kind of a high-level overview of our local and national. Please think about that. If there's concepts in that domain that we missed or you think need to be embellished or deleted, that's the kind of feedback that we'd love for you. And now it's my pleasure to turn it over to Dr. Fiala, who's going to talk about national leadership. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dolan. And it's an interesting concept, I think. How many people here have served on a council or a committee, either at the local level or at a school or at the national level, state level? How many people have actually had leadership? Look at the entire room, practically. Everybody's been. So everybody got there somehow because you were interested, number one. And number two, somebody invited you to participate, perhaps. But Woody Allen said, 80% of success is just showing up. And sometimes people just show up. And then all of a sudden you do something well and they say, hey, that was great. Why don't you do this now? And so they move you right up the ladder. So as you go through a hierarchical organization, sometimes, those ladders get a little steeper. But the fact of the matter is the problems get greater. For example, people say, one time, like Dr. Dolan said, sometimes you put something out in a newsletter or something and people say, I didn't get that, how come I didn't see it? Wait a minute, we published it, we did this, we put two newsletters out, we put a webinar out, and they still didn't get it. Bob Branchard, who was a former president of the American Dental Association, said one time, he said, only the leadership reads, because we would get inordinate number of well-versed leaders from the American Dental Association, all the way from the local level to the state level, all the way up. It would bubble up, and they still didn't know. How come we're doing this? Why did you do this? I didn't see this. And so I have to disagree with Bob on that one thing. But the fact of the matter is that when you get there, the problems get a little bit steeper. And so it takes a little bit more time to really think about how you do this. Leadership at the national level is stewardship, because you're responsible for a number of different hierarchical levels in that organization. It's not status. And I think anybody looking into leadership, and I think everybody here knows, that's not why you do it. But some people think that way. Now, national leaders have to see the entire landscape, the entire profession, entrusted with governance, policy, strategic oversight, and advance the entire profession. And it's a steep curve. And so by doing that, we have to really engage in different ways. It's critically important for everybody at the national level, if you happen to be on a national level board, everybody's got to focus on what they are talking about, focus on the issue at hand, do the homework, because sometimes you can't walk into a room when you haven't read the compilation. Or you saw you didn't read the background on one of these important resolutions. And so those are the things that stop us. It's the low-hanging fruit that we can't control, because some people come in and they ask a lot of questions that everybody already knows the answers to, but it's the least common denominator in terms of the conversation. So that's a critically important. So there's some things that have to be specific at a national level. Understand leadership responsibilities at that level. Because if you're coming up through different levels of the organization, using the ADA as an example, you get it different. You think you have that job down at the local level, but when you get to the state level, it's entirely different. Why? Because you're dealing with a number of different districts within your entity, your constituent. And then When you get there and you go up to a higher level, it's another different experience. So understanding those responsibilities to be informed and know the cultural differences across the jurisdictions, that's really very important as well. Communicate effectively with diverse stakeholders, because credibility in relationships with professional bodies, policymakers, and media really are your outlets for getting your message out, and especially across the country if you're at a national level. And so building strategic alliances with other organizations. So if you're in an organization, let's say the Society of American Indian Dentists or Hispanic Dental Association, NDA, all of those organizations have relationships with other organizations, and those collaborations are critically important. You can't, things that they bring to you are sometimes things that you're not doing right now. So you have to be listening for those kinds of things. Critically important. And you have to championship leadership at scale, because the people that we work with are the people that feed up information to us. And it's not not top down. It's getting information up. There's a great book, and probably the best leadership book I've ever read that's not about leadership. Everybody's had leadership books. There's a million of them. You can find them everywhere. One of the best books I've ever read is a book by Robert Kelly from Carnegie Mellon University. Spent 20 years studying followership. Now, when we were young, what did people say to you? You want to be a leader. You don't want to be a follower. Don't be a follower. You be a leader. You know? But Robert Kelly said, you know what? His research showed that in the most successful organizations, and this was a long-term study that he's done in his entire work, they said that all those successful organizations, 20% was related to the top-level leadership in the organization. 80% was to the people that worked there that understood the mission of the organization, were engaged with what they were doing, proud of what they were doing, didn't really aspire to be leaders at the top level, but they wanted to be recognized for what they did and the mission that they had for the organization. And that's critically important. And so 80%. So the book is called The Power of Followership. It might be back in print, but he also has a website. You should look at that, because those are the things that we need to work with. The more educated and the more engaged the people that you work with at different levels below that organization level, in other words, national, you go down to state, maybe go down to district, or even local, the more they're engaged with the mission, the more they know what we're trying to do, they feed up, and then we get better. And that's how that works. Demonstrating visionary leadership is critically important. You really need to have evidence-based, forward-thinking people and strategies to address the emerging challenges that come forward, because they're always going to come forward. And they're not easy to solve sometimes. The adaptive leadership that I was talking about earlier, those are some of the things that we need to engage with. Leveraging digital platforms. Right now, we can't avoid it, because every organization is becoming digital, as I mentioned. And the way you engage it is really critically important to your success now. That's how people engage with us. And we have to be careful about that. Transparency and member engagement while maintaining a human connection, because we can't forget that. Continuously learning from healthcare peers, because we can learn from other organizations, medical organizations, all of the other healthcare peers that we have. Some of the best discussions we've ever had was with the president of the National Dental Association, or perhaps the Dental Hygiene Association. All of those organizations have things that they're doing that are making them successful, and you can learn from them, because we may not be doing that. Accepting responsibility at the highest level, because whatever you put out there, you can't say, well, we didn't know about that. You can't say that. You have to take responsibility for the mission that you have and what you do. You have to be answerable to your leadership decisions and their consequences, because there are always consequences. People talk about work-life balance, working too hard. The best quote was from Jack Welch from GE. He said, "There's no such thing as work-life balance. You have choices, you make them, and they have consequences." And they do, because work-life balance, am I going to spend more time with my family, or do I have to do this for the company or for the practice or for wherever we're going? You know, you're balancing it all the time. Work-life balance, you know, is a consequence if you can't be with your family, but you have to do something else, or it's a consequence to the organization if you can't be there. So one of those things is critically important for you, and the problem is it's always balancing. There's no one-level balance. So there are times when you're focused on the organization that you're invested with because you've got a lot of things going on, and then you have other times when you can take a little bit more time with your family because that's critically important, because you never want to forget that. And then obviously serving as an ambassador for the profession. When you're at that level, you really have to serve for the entire profession, for all organizations under healthcare, because that's what we need to do. We need to be raising our leadership signature, if you will. Critically important. And now with that, I'm going to turn to Sir Naren Wilson for international leadership.
Thank you. Just before I say a few words about international leadership, another sort of step up, just to remind you that in asking you to review this draft, please look at it in two ways. First, are we challenging ourselves enough to do what we should be doing for our profession? And secondly, the people we're serving at the local level, our patients, our team members, and if you're into regional, national, and indeed international leadership, is it stretching those individuals that get into those roles that will do us justice? So please look at them in that way. This is really important because it's a two-way thing. It's not just what we feel comfortable. Will it work? Will it give the confidence? Will I have confidence in the person who is leading us nationally or indeed internationally? Will it work? And will the patients, etc., have confidence? So please look at them in two ways. International leadership is moving up another step from where Bob was. It's a fantastic thing to do, but it does require a lot of global awareness and statesmanship. A lot of what you do at international level, regrettably, ends up as compromise, because there's such great variation across the world in terms of cultural and natural differences. And if you really are in a global mind, half the world has never seen a dentist, will never see a dentist, don't even know what a dentist is, possibly, in many countries. And to be engaging countries where they have real problems with access and very little manpower, and to say, hey, we need a global strategy, on the one hand, you get a wealthy, well-developed nation such as the US, and a very poor nation. How do you help a nation that's got one dentist? Real challenge, that. So it is a tremendous thing to do, but it is a high level, and as Bob said, you not to get yourself engaged in all the lower down levels. You've got to delegate, you've got to have confidence in the national leaders who you're talking to, and they in turn have to have confidence in the regional, a bit like your structure in the college here. It has got to be delegated down. And those in the international scene are highly dependent on the national leaders. They can't be everywhere and anywhere and understand the issues in how many countries in the world? Let's say 180, is it? Somewhere around about there. You can't be on top of that. So, but we need somebody, we need people out there. And in looking at these criteria, I would encourage you, okay, not many of you would aspire or will get there. But at the same time, does it challenge that person enough to deal with global issues? Will it give you confidence in that person that they're doing what this profession can do globally for the global community and a global population? Because we ought to be doing that in amongst all the other things we're doing. So it is building in all the experience, all the things. I don't want to be repetitive, inspirational. You've got to reflect, etc., etc., all the things that have been said to you this morning. And it is about looking at the global problems, the global issues, things to say, wouldn't it be nice at the end of the day if collectively, because we're not huge around the world, there's only 2.5 million dentists in the world. That's it, total. That group of people can make a difference for billions. Wouldn't that be nice? And that's what we expect of our international leaders. Does that standard challenge them to do that? Will you have confidence in them? So please look at it that way. And we do have to challenge ourselves. We are very much part of the overall health care. I'm a great exponent to say oral health is an integral part of general health and well-being. And we ought to be there with the rest of health care sorting out global issues. And we must never undersell ourselves. And our leaders at this international level must be up there putting that message across of the importance of what we do to the general health and well-being of the whole population, not just our own. So, those who have tried to capture in these draft standards, difficult to do in a succinct way that is realizable and tangible in the world we live in today. So it's a great thing to do, to move up onto that stage. Frightening thing to do in many ways. It's a Pandora's box, and it's a leap of faith beyond national leadership. But it must be done, and we must have people who have a set of standards, who they can look to and say, what's expected of me? What do you expect of that person that steps up onto that plate? What's expected of me doing it? What is expected by the people I'm serving? And that's what we're trying to capture. And indeed, at all the levels of the leadership. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a quick overview of the draft that we hope that you will have a look at. Give us your comments and feedback, because we think it's really important and we'd like to get this right and take it forward. Thank you very much.
Hope you've enjoyed all those presentations. They're obviously very high-level presentations, right, on deep topics. We do have time for a couple of non-AI related comments or questions. So would anyone like to put their hand up and give us some preliminary feedback? Right here. Yep.
Brian.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic presentations. I am really delighted to see, this initiative taking place. I think that within all of healthcare, not only dentistry, that leadership development is going to be critical if the healthcare profession nationally, internationally is going to advance. My comment is, and the thing that I'm most pleased to see is the piece on national, it appears under national leadership, and that is paying it forward. I hope that that concept, that piece permeates not only national leadership, but all levels of leadership, including international, because without that leadership development, we're really going to be in trouble. And I think I'm delighted to see that, and I hope that there's a lot of emphasis on that piece.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
There was.
You can give it to our foundation. It will help his cause.
Graham Greenland, Grand Rapids, Michigan. Thank you, all four of you. You demonstrate a phenomenal understanding and intelligence when it comes to emotional intelligence, the adaptability, and the comprehensive environmental awareness it takes in leadership. My question is, as we champion the effort to onboard the next generation of professionalism in a digital platform, are there examples or other universities or organizations that align the digital platform to a human extension rather than a tool alone? If we can give the perception of a humanistic tool that betters our compassion and the extension, can we write this in a way that employs more union in how we change into that generation?
It's a great question. I'll open it up to the panel.
Sorry, I didn't
Terry?
quite catch it. Yeah.
I mean, I believe we have some deans in the audience, especially of new schools who are working to engender this in their educational philosophy, and maybe they want to speak to that. I think it's a fabulous question. When we use the word augmented, we're thinking of tools maybe, and not how it can actually help us be better clinicians, more empathic perhaps, in addition to being more efficient and effective and accurate, right? So if that's part of your question. I do believe there's some innovative new schools or existing schools who are challenging themselves to figure out how to do this. And I would welcome maybe if there's someone in the audience from one of those new schools who wants to comment.
Joe's working it.
I can't say no to Dr. Dolan when she requested new school to give its perspective. So
I was hoping you'd stand
I'm
up.
one of the deans from a brand new school that has not yet graduated its first class. So we are daily in that chaotic startup, agility, anticipatory, disruptive mindset. And I think you've sort of put the pulse on the question, which is at the grassroots level, which is our student interviewing, is where you start to inculcate core fundamentals of what the environment looks like in the world, what's the evolving landscape of healthcare. And I think our job as like a meteorologist is to show what the turbulence is, what the patterns are in our field, what the controversies are, where the stakeholders are, and to use agents of technology to help reach farther and farther on the impacts that we try to produce. And some examples of that are we engage learners, we call them learners in their early first year, where we do activities like a hackathon. And a hackathon is when people come together with some design sprints, and we ask, well, what would a new community practice in a very underserved area look like in 2030? What would the ultimate patient experience look like in 2030 if we were to do that together? And so we actually have learned more from our learners than we have when we didn't have them on the table when it came to policy making, operations, newer technologies. They've been the earliest adopters, and then the faculty come on board and say, oh, I don't know, you could do a scan like this or implement technology like this. So I think if we as leaders continue to embrace growth mindset and we're humble and vulnerable to what the other side may share, if you will, and share that side together, then it makes some really incredible things happen. And again, the proof is on the pudding when they graduate, but so far we've seen some really incredible insights of how leadership can be such a double-edged sword to promote innovation and help the existential threats of our healthcare systems. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the last question from Dr. Tom Kelly.
Not a question, just a comment. Just thank you for this leadership track, because I think it's important. The paying it forward part of things is critical, but paying it forward with some standards and some understanding, not just asking someone to do it or electing them or pushing them to do it, and they don't have the tools. We need to be able to present those tools to us, or for us to present to those new leaders. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So now we move to the audience participation portion of the morning. A little bit of context. No one in dentistry has taken on this challenge. This idea of Sir to pursue leadership standards. So when he approached us as a college and said, would you like to lead this effort? This is part of leading the effort. It's to get all of our voices involved. And so what we're going to do today is to ask you to do some work for us and be part of this process, be part of the journey. So on your table is a section, one of the sections that we've talked about today of the standards for leadership with feedback questions. On your tables, and if you're at a table with just 2 or 3 people, if you want to find another table, please do so. Think about the questions, exchange ideas with each other, make a few notes on your thoughts, first yourself, and then go through, this is what I think, what do you think? All right? Then respond. So we're going to ask you to submit your anonymous responses to 3 poll questions, and you should see those at the bottom of the page. And when that's done, we'll invite people to come back and give us, using one of the microphones, some thoughts on the different sections and what was discussed at your table. All right? Then, the third section, on the back of your sheet, there are additional questions that we want you to answer as individuals. Bring that sheet to the table in the back of the room and trade it for the CE verification of your attendance. So this is you want to get your credit, you've got to turn this piece of paper in, okay? No sticks, only carrots, okay? All right, off you go, and then the task force members will be moving around the room, checking in with all of you, okay? We're going to give this about 20 minutes, maybe 15. No matter how many times I asked you to quieten down, it wouldn't have worked as effectively as that. So this is a case of be careful what you ask for, because you all took off and had great discussion. It was fantastic to hear the energy and the vibe and all the conversations going on. I only heard AI on a couple of tables, so that was good. Now, it's time to get your feedback through a microphone. So any tables anywhere that would like to kind of share a little bit of a summary about their discussion. So the first thing you should do is say which of the standards you were discussing and what you would like to share. Don't get shy now. Come on. All right. Okay, the icebreaker. Fantastic. Go ahead and stand up. Go ahead and stand up. Shh.
Hi, I was just going to talk about the part where it asked what any gaps were, and my thoughts were just follow through would be a great thing to include on there, because you can do all those things, but if you don't follow through on what you say you're going to do, then you haven't really accomplished much.
Okay, thank you very much. Joe, to your left.
So the one gap that, something that I kind of live by is to act with purpose and to have a plan, even if you don't know fully what that plan is.
Great, thank you.
So we were talking about number 8, which is the commitment to lifelong learning. And we realized that we've all kind of known some people that were very well knowledged and very well spoken and very well studied, but they weren't really willing to teach what they had learned to others. I think part of that learning should be if you do the work to absorb everything and apply it in a clinical situation or in a teaching situation, you should be able to help others hand that down.
Yeah, that's a great point. Great point. Are you learning for yourself or are you learning for others? Right. Thank you.
You guys, oh wait, I know we have people here that want to talk.
About anything?
About your
Well, actually, I just want to applaud the initiative. I was figuring out there's more than 2,000 decades of opportunities to serve and contribute in this room. And that service, the opportunity to have impact was on the back of leadership, only we had no training in leadership. There's been no structure of leadership in dentistry. So this is going to make all of our efforts a lot more effective.
Joe, to your left, right over there.
I might be loud enough.
Even if you were, I wouldn't admit it.
Thank you. One of the things we talked about was mentorship. So not just mentorship in what you learn, but also mentorship in those virtues and qualities of a leader. So taking new grads, young students, and actually mentoring them in leadership as well.
Thank you.
If I can make a comment on that, over in the other room, the SPIA organization is working now, and they're talking about that pathway from where they are to this table of rooms, and that they're looking at an alumni association all about that mentorship, because we got to fill the gap, that black hole gap between graduating from school and rising to the level of you all in this room.
As an example, I won the ACD award my graduating year 21 years ago. And have not heard a thing about ACD since then until I was nominated this year. So perfect example.
Joe? Yep.
There you go.
Joe, your pedometer's going
He's trying to get
full
his
blast today.
He's trying to get his steps in.
Sorry, making you get your steps in. We talked about the mentoring emerging leaders too at our table, and the concepts we came up with was make sure you personalize it. That personal outreach is really, really important because we all have imposter syndrome and we're perfectionists. And so if somebody doesn't tell you you're ready, you don't think you're ready. We talked about it's important to have a structured plan with expectations of what the mentor relationship will look like. We talked about the fact that it needs to happen at the local level because the organic relationships are more powerful and lasting than if it's not something organic, just two people matched up that don't know each other. And then we also talked about that it should include specific and intentional pipeline development for leadership. So you can't just mentor someone and not show them the next step and the next step and the next step, and you have to walk them along that leadership journey to make it effective.
Wonderful. Okay, this side of the room, you've been awfully quiet, but you weren't quiet during the participation session. So a couple of comments from this side of the room, please. This is what is separating you from lunch. Come on.
I have a comment about the implications of financial pressure on students and practitioners. And perhaps our table has thought about the American College developing a module that could be used as part of ethics training at university or for young dentists coming out of school. Because we all know the pressure that young dentists face in many work opportunities where they have to meet a financial number. Yeah. And that's where ethics can get compromised. And so how do they react to that? What can we suggest they change their views or talk to the owner of the dentist about? How to manage the financial pressure would be something would be very helpful for them.
Yeah.
And then the other side is the cost of education itself. And I'm not sure we can do very much about that aspect.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'm going to take one more comment.
Okay, we were talking about the multi-generational and the balance that's needed, physical and digital interaction. And when that interaction is had, having the purpose and also deliverables. What are we doing when we get in there, and then follow through. So.
Thank you. So as we draw this session to a close, I want to thank you all for being such an engaged audience. We're sitting up here and we can see that you're really not on your phones too much and you're paying attention and you're not chattering away to each other. And that means a lot to us. We've put a lot of time into this, but to have you be so engaged and then give us your feedback and all the stuff we're going to collect now going forward means more than you can ever know. I want to give the last word to Suneran. Suneran, you are the one that brought this idea up. It's your baby, as it were, and you've handed it to the college. I hope that we have done your idea justice, and we're going to let you close this session.
Absolutely, and thank you for your engagement. It's been a fascinating journey so far, and I was going to say some group over here, giving me thoughts about leaders ought to be champions in equality and diversity, which I don't think we say, and it should be there, I think. So a comment like that is just fantastic, and it's, I think it's an omission, and I really appreciate it. And I look forward to reading all of your comments and taking them on board. We don't want a massive document. Part of the trouble of this is to do it in a succinct way to capture all of these wonderful things. But ladies and gentlemen, I think we are doing something really special because we are, as a profession, we do not have these standards. Nobody anywhere in the world has got leadership standards in oral health care. And there's an opportunity for the college to be spearheading and driving internationally. And I can see in many international communities people will pick this up and say thank you. And thank you for all of your input today, because I think it will make a difference. And I think it's something the profession has really needed. So I look forward to taking it forward. And when we've got it there, please embrace it, take it forward. It's important. I think it'll make a difference to you locally, regionally, nationally, and dentistry internationally as well. So thank you again. And again, we'll look forward to taking this forward with your input. Thank you.
So today, in today's world, you have lots of choices about organizations and which ones you choose to belong to. And if you're like me, you want to belong to organizations that are actually doing something, actually trying to make a difference. And so hopefully you see that today, this organization, especially for the new fellows, they really are an organization that does make a difference in our profession. So thank you again. Now I'm going to turn it over to Mike Graham. Mike?
All right, thank you so much. Why don't we give him a round of applause? What a great session.